Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a topic that, honestly, is fundamental to how law works, but is also, well, it's often this huge administrative headache for modern legal teams. We're talking about legal discovery.
It's a great topic. It's really where the rubber meets the road, or maybe where gigabytes meet the courtroom.
That's a better way to put it.
It's this massive obligation firms have to, find, review, and then hand over enormous amounts of data. We're talking emails, contracts, memos, everything for lawsuits and investigations.
And if you're a global firm, it's not just a volume problem, is it? It's a geography problem. It's this absolute nightmare of trying to be efficient and consistent when you have massive data sets governed by completely different rules in different countries.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to get into the specific ways that AI is starting to bring some order to that chaos. We're going beyond just, simple keyword searches.
Wait, beyond?
We're looking at how AI can standardize responses using these really sophisticated AI clause libraries, and this is key, targeted risk scoring. It's all about managing that global legal exposure.
Okay, so let's unpack that. I think to really get why this is such a big deal, we have to start with the problem itself, the old way of doing things, the manual process.
Right. You have to appreciate the pain point. Discovery is a cornerstone of fairness. Both sides have to share their evidence. But in a big corporate case, a cross-border case, my gosh, you could be looking at tens of millions of documents.
Just picture that. It's an impossible amount of data for a human to process.
It really is. And for a long time, the only answer was to just throw people at it. Big teams of associates, paralegals, sitting in rooms, just manually reading, sometimes for years.
Looking for that one crucial email.
Exactly. And the weaknesses of that approach were, well, they were crippling. It's obviously slow and expensive, but the real failure, the critical one, is the lack of precision.
It's just so prone to human error, right? You miss a key document, or maybe even worse, you misunderstand a standard clause in a contract.
That is the one. That's the hidden risk.
Well.
Let's take two really common contract terms: confidentiality and indemnity.
Okay.
If you have 5 different teams in 5 different offices around the world, and each one of them categorizes or responds to a similar indemnity clause just a little bit differently, you've just created a massive inconsistency and a massive liability.
And then you have the jurisdictional complexity piled on top of that.
Oh, it's brutal. Disclosure deadlines, what format the documents need to be in, what counts as privileged, it all changes dramatically if you're New York versus, say, Tokyo.
So how does that affect the clauses themselves?
Well, that's the strategic risk. An indemnification clause might be strictly enforced under English common law, but that same clause in a civil law country in Europe, it might have totally different limitations on liability.
So manually, the firm is stuck. You either go slow to try and be consistent, or you go fast and you sacrifice that consistency.
Exactly. And neither is a good option. You ended up with huge costs and, honestly, big questions about whether your discovery response was even defensible in court.
That human inconsistency could literally be used against you.
It absolutely could. Which brings us, finally, to the technology. Let's get into solution part 1, this game changer, AI clause libraries.
Okay, let's get past the buzzwords. How are these AI tools actually standardizing things where humans couldn't?
This is where machine learning gets really impressive. These aren't just databases. They're sophisticated models using natural language processing, or NLP, that are trained on these enormous data sets.
So not just the firm's own contract?
Oh, no. We're talking millions of legal documents, precedents, case law, successful litigation outcomes, global regulatory filings, all of it.
So the AI isn't just looking for the word indemnification. It actually understands what that clause means in that context.
You've got it. It's using pattern recognition to categorize clauses by their legal function, by their risk profile. It knows the difference between a simple boilerplate confidentiality clause and one with, unusual exceptions or jurisdictional limits.
So how does that help with the London versus Frankfurt problem? If the law is different, how does it create consistency?
That's the real magic. The libraries are trained jurisdictionally. So when the AI finds a clause, it instantly checks the document's metadata. It knows this contract is governed by German law, so it doesn't just pull any response.
It pulls the German one?
It pulls the standardized, pre-approved response template that is specific to Germany's legal environment. It takes the human guesswork, that subjective interpretation, completely out of the equation.
Wow. Okay, I can immediately see some huge benefits there. First, just consistency. You're not worrying anymore that your team in Asia is responding differently than your team in Europe.
And that flows right into efficiency. Think of the time saved. What used to take hours of a partner's time to review and draft is now auto-populated in minutes from a template that's already been validated.
But I think the biggest thing is accuracy at scale. You're removing that risk of human error, of someone overlooking a tiny but crucial detail because you're using pre-vetted language every single time.
And we should also mention customization. The source material is clear on this. These aren't totally rigid. If a firm has a unique need in a certain region, they can tailor the library to include specific clauses or exceptions for that place. It maintains the standard while still respecting the local nuance.
That's incredible. Standardizing while still respecting complexity. Okay, so that's half the battle, finding the clause and responding correctly. But the other half is knowing how much you should care about it.
Exactly. Which brings us to solution part 2, using AI to evaluate your exposure with risk scoring.
This feels like where the real strategic value kicks in.
It's arguably where the most value is, yes, because it moves you past just relevance, do we have to produce this, and into strategic impact. Okay, we have to produce this. How bad is it?
And the AI here is even more sophisticated, right? It's trained on outcomes.
That's right. The models have consumed historical data on litigation, on settlement amounts, regulatory fines, even data on how specific judges in certain courts have ruled in the past.
So it's not just reading the clause, it's weighing it against real-world consequences.
Precisely. It assesses risk across key areas: financial exposure, reputational damage, compliance issues.
So let's go back to our indemnification clause. The AI finds it, and it gives it a risk score. Let's say a 9 out of 10, a really high score. How does it get to that number?
So it looks at the clause itself, of course. Is it broad? Is it narrow? But then, crucially, it layers on that jurisdictional context we talked about. For example, a contract with a liability cap in a jurisdiction known for enforcing those caps might get a relatively low risk score.
But the exact same clause, same dollar amount.
In a jurisdiction where courts tend to throw out those liability caps on public policy grounds,
The score shoots way up.
instantly, the AI recognizes that systemic risk that isn't even in the text of the document. It's applying the right level of scrutiny based on the likelihood of that clause actually being enforced. That is a level of intelligence that is almost impossible to achieve manually at scale.
That's a really good point.
Right.
But does that create a risk of, over-reliance? If the AI is trained on history, what about a brand new law or a novel legal argument?
A very strategic question. And the answer is that the AI is a tool for prioritization, not a replacement for human judgment.
Ah, okay.
The system is designed to wave a giant red flag. It says this is a 9 out of 10 risk.
Yeah.
You need to look at this now. The human lawyer's job is then to see that flag, figure out why it's a 9, and apply their expertise to any new factors. The system just makes sure that 9 is never, ever missed.
Which brings us to the clear benefits. The first one is obvious, prioritization. You know exactly where to focus your attention.
Absolutely. You're not just slogging through documents one by one. You go straight to the high-risk stuff first. It's surgical.
And the jurisdiction-specific risk assessment is a benefit in its own right. You're not just guessing. You're getting a risk rating that is tailored to that specific region's legal reality.
Which lets you do real proactive risk management. Because you see these scores early, you can start building a strategy around a problematic document before it's even handed over. You're not reacting anymore, you're planning.
And it all adds up to compliance assurance. You're confident your responses are complete, defensible, and meet all the local standards, which reduces your risk of penalties.
And when you put the two together, the standardized answers from the clause library and the strategic focus from risk scoring, you get the blueprint for the modern discovery process, which is the final piece of the puzzle, the synthesis.
Right. This is where you bring it all together into a single, unified process. Firms do this by building firm-wide templates, which become the backbone for every discovery request.
Think of it as the digital playbook. A new case comes in, you don't start with a blank document. You pull up the template for that region, for that type of case, and it acts as a kind of smart engine.
And it seamlessly integrates both systems we've been talking about.
Exactly. The templates automatically pull in the right clauses from the AI library so the language is consistent.
And the risk scores.
They're embedded directly into the workflow. So when you're looking at a document, you might see a little color-coded flag right next to a clause. The risk assessment is baked right in. You're not juggling spreadsheets.
So a junior associate in Singapore and a senior partner in London are, for all intents and purposes, looking at the same risk-informed playbook.
That's the goal. Decentralized work, but centralized intelligence.
And it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, right? The templates can be customized.
They have to be. The template for a regulatory investigation, which is all about compliance and internal communications, is going to be very different from one for an M&A deal, which is focused on reps and warranties,
So you're optimizing not just for jurisdiction, but for the actual legal task at hand.
which refines the quality and, of course, the speed of the whole process.
So let's zoom out. What does this all mean? When you summarize the impact, these AI tools, the clause libraries, and the risk scoring, they feel like more than just a software update. This is a fundamental change in how firms handle risk.
It's a complete overhaul of the workflow. By building these templates that auto-populate responses and intelligently rank exposure across jurisdictions, firms are seeing, dramatic cost savings and much faster timelines.
Okay.
But more importantly, the quality and defensibility of their work goes way up.
So the ability to streamline this incredibly complex global process while actually improving accuracy and risk management, that's not just a goal anymore, it's becoming the standard.
It is. By using this kind of AI, firms are future-proofing themselves. They're positioning themselves right at the cutting edge. The old days of just drowning in documents and hoping for the best, those are coming to an end.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to think about. If the AI is now handling the consistency, if it's standardizing the clauses, and it's ranking all the evidence by risk, what is the new role for the human lawyer?
It's a profound shift, isn't it? It frees up the lawyer's most valuable asset, their time. Their brain power is no longer wasted on document processing or quality control. Instead, they can focus 100% of their intellect on the application of the law, on building strategy, and on advising their client about what to do with only the most critical, highest-risk documents.
The human lawyer moves from reviewer to strategist.
Entirely.
A powerful change. We'll leave you with that thought. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.